Hello, and welcome to the third video of the Risk Blueprint dedicated to actionable risk management with the CRIC Taxonomy. I will take you through the principle and benefit of categories of cause, risk, impact, and control, its market practice and example, finishing with some applications to risk appetite and people risk. So CRIC stands for cause, risk, impact, and control, and highlights the importance of having clear categories of the different elements of your risk and controls in your risk management to pinpoint your risk assessment and categorize your events properly. Now, what are the features of this taxonomy? First of all, it needs to be relevant to your organization risk profile and exposure. Some people have different risks, especially given the different nature of your activities. You want your taxonomy to be MECE for mutually exclusive and collectively exhaustive. So these categories need to embrace as much as possible a comprehensive set of all the possible causes of all your risks with the major impacts and the key controls for it. It needs to be concise as well. Usually, best practice is to apply the reporting on taxonomies on the second level, and I'll take you through several examples. The tailoring can be done at level 3, so a third type of subdivision. So it's a bit more concise than the risk register. It highlights the importance of causes and controls to have an actionable risk appetite, and that's largely the point of the exercise. And also you remember that a key feature of maturity of risk framework is iteration. So you want your taxonomy to be iterative, to be adapted every time, typically every 1 year is good practice to the different findings of your RCSA or of incidents happening in your firm. Now, more specifically, what are the principles and benefits of having a clear taxonomy in the business? Well, you want your risk categories that refer to potential adverse events and do not mix the causes of non-financial risk, its impact, or even more common, refer to control failures. Impacts are obviously defined in your impact taxonomies, and they feed the risk scale. So there is a one-to-one relation between your categories of impacts that you're looking at and the evaluation of your risk and control self-assessment matrix. More detail on here and also in the next videos. And then finally, your taxonomies of causes and controls really form the basis of your leading key risk indicators, and the same way the thresholds of your KRIs are linked to your risk appetite. So hopefully you start to see by this third video now all the connections between the different methods and tools of your risk management framework. What are the benefits that you can typically expect from a taxonomy is to have an organized and justified risk assessment. Because the risk you assess can be clearly linked to the different causes that will drive the inherent risk levels and to the different controls that will drive the residual risk level, so the risk after controls. Ex post, it's very useful, it's critical really, to use it to record and report operational risk incidents and to analyze them through the recurrent causes that might have occur in incident reporting or the typical failure of controls. So at the end of the year or at the end of a period after your incident reporting, you can really pinpoint where are the repetitive causes of some given incidents, or where are the controls that typically fails, or those who do not fail, and which impacts. So, given the importance of it, how do you do it? Well, let's start with the most common categories, the risk categories, and the best-known taxonomy of risk for operational risk in the financial sector are the 7 categories of the Basel committees, defined defined now a quarter of a century ago, so I wouldn't necessarily advise that you use those, but they form the building block of operational practice. A more modern example of risk taxonomy is the one published in 2019 already by ORX, the Operational Risk Data Consortium of banks and insurance companies, that went through an exhaustive exercise of looking at the 500,000 lost data points of the bank and insurance members and looking at what are the clusters of risks. And if you are in the financial sector, I would really encourage you to look at these categories, and even more so at downloading these slides at the end of this video to have a look at it. And you have 3 pools of risks here. The one in yellow are risks that did appear in the previous Basel category, in the original taxonomy, but were at level 2 and are now promoted, if you want, at level 1, because they are getting more and more important. And this is, for example, third-party risk management or data management or business continuity. The block in blue is pretty much a one-to-one correspondence to the original categories of risks. And the fourth block, it's essentially a detail, a granularization of CBPB, client product and business practices, into legal compliance and financial compliance, etc. So this is for information around the market practice. Another typical market practice, also published in my Wiley textbook and later on in the GARP material that I created and published for GARP, completely validated by a lot of large firms. This is an example of risk categories with different severity. These are, if you follow our next video, you'll see this is a typical impact scales that you see on the heat map. But also the impact type that firms highlight really emphasize the type of risks, that the type of damage they don't want to suffer. Financial impact, obviously, more and more service delivery and continuity, obviously customer detriment and reputation damage, and of course regulatory consequences for regulated sectors. So there is also a clear correspondence between your categories of impact and what you assess as part of your risk and control self-assessment. Cause taxonomy, easy also, in a sense, PPSE for people, process, system, and external events, and that relates very closely to the definition of operational risk, being the risk of loss due to inadequate or failed processes or people or system or from external events. So our level 1 cause category of operational risk is pretty much given by the regulators for decades now. And here in these examples, you don't have to follow it, but these are some suggestions of level 2 in people, risk, resource, competence, engagement, etc., process, system. For external events, if you're not familiar with the so-called PESTLE analysis, I would encourage you to look it up as well. PESTLE stands for political, economical, social, technological, legal, and environmental, ecological environment. And it's a good way to segment the different dimensions of your risk environment and to see which type of external events can affect your organization. And finally, we are in the second C of the CRIC taxonomy for controls. Again, at level 1, very obvious segmentations of the type of controls that align also with the Institute of Internal Auditors preventive, directive, detective, and corrective controls. And here also a concise examples. You have more in my book and more in the downloadable examples that you will have accessible on our website after these videos, some high level of controls. But what I want to highlight also with these very concise examples is your control taxonomy doesn't need to have 250 entries. You can have quite a restricted way of defining your controls if you define them at a level that is high enough, like segregation of duties, which includes the process of segregating duties across different departments, or access controls that can target digital access, physical access, data access, authority, and so forth. Okay, so a lot of benefits for actually quite, I would say almost a minimum, or let's say a reasonable effort. And so just to illustrate the point, let's finish with some case studies and application. Here it's, again, it's an abstract and write-up of a mission we've done at a Belgian bank where the control taxonomy were linked with the different causes. So in that bank, we looked at the different level of cause, people, system, etc., and tagged or highlighted the more important controls that were in place to form these basis categorizations, with also a highlight of whether the control was preventive, detective, etc. Again, just to insist on actionability of risk management. So you want to drive your risk management. You don't want to endure the risk in your firms. And the way to control your risks is to assess the cause and to mitigate them through prevention and corrective actions. We talked about actionable risk appetite around causes and controls. I never insist enough on focusing your risk management to the root causes of your risks rather than exposed to what happens. And so one last application of the risk taxonomy here in line with your risk appetite. Typically, you want your risk appetite statements to be defined at risk level 1. So for operational risk, what's your risk appetite for continuity, for information security, for process risk, for investments risks, going back to examples I've covered in a previous video of risk appetite, but that would be the so-called level 1 of operational risk. And then your monitoring metrics, your appetite KRI through KPIs, KRIs would be at level 2. Now, in case you're a bit puzzled, I have an illustration for you. So this is an example of people risk with level 1 taxonomy, people risk, level 2 resourcing. So do I have enough hands on desks, competence of my staff, engagement of my staff, conduct, and dependency. Do I have some dependency key man risk? And also here, in a very succinct way, some examples of KPIs and KRIs linked to the taxonomy for resources, time to recruit, percentage vacancies per team, etc., etc. I'll let you read this in your own time. So do you know that we have examples of taxonomy on our website for you to download? Well, check it out. Thank you for your attention.